You all right?
No.
What's it? You look like you're getting emotional.
Yeah, I just saw Patrick Ewing, man. Yeah, that was Patrick Ewing.
Can we get a close-up on the
Yeah, can we zoom into that? That's real tears, ladies and gentlemen. That's not trickery.
You know, a lot of people, when they talk about the greats,
There you
Patrick
go.
Ewing name never comes up, but I'm putting Patrick Ewing names in there as one of the greats.
And Patrick Ewing doesn't get a mention?
If you only judge greatness by rings, then you probably forgot about Patrick Ewing. Because while Shaq was breaking backboards and Hakeem was dream-shaking defenders into retirement, Ewing was going toe-to-toe with all of them without ever blinking. Somewhere along the way, people stopped talking about him like he mattered. But the legends, they know how special Ewing really was.
I mean, I tell people, man, you guys sleep on Patrick.
He was the scapegoat.
Patrick not likely to shoot it. Up there! Whoa! Ewing with the spin. Ewing, yes! 1 8 seconds. Oh, my goodness!
He was coming out and doing whatever it took to win.
The man finished top 5 in MVP voting 6 times. 6. He didn't win a ring, yes, but if that's the only lens we're using, you're missing the full picture. You see, in the 90s, Patrick Ewing was the moment. He wasn't just the heart of the Knicks. He was the guy holding it down in the biggest basketball market on earth. New York was living through him. He was the face, the franchise, the fire that kept Madison Square Garden lit every night. And that spotlight came with pressure.
He's going to take us to a championship in New York.
But it also made him a role model to an entire generation.
He's incredible. He's amazing. This is my birthday present coming here.
He was a hero.
Be cool. Stay in school. How'd you beat me?
It's all you touch, Dad.
Grant Hill still remembers what that meant to him as a kid.
I fell in love with basketball watching Patrick play in college and followed him religiously, diehard Pat Ewing fan, so I wore the same number that he wore. And then, of course, when he went to the league, went to the Knicks, all of a sudden the Knicks became relevant. The Knicks became exciting. One of the great joys for me in my career was to compete against Patrick. I remember the first time being on the court against him in the Garden, and I was just in awe.
On the spin, blocked by Ewing, and he lost control. It's a 24-second violation.
That wasn't just fanboy energy, that was Ewing energy. The kind that made a young Grant Hill feel like walking into the Garden and seeing Pat across from him was some surreal video game moment. Because for a generation of future stars, Ewing was the blueprint. Jalen Rose didn't sugarcoat it either.
PE crazy, crazy PE. A traditional center, young people, 7 foot tall, can play facing the basket, can turn over both shoulders, can protect the rim, double-figure rebounder, was a terrific star at Georgetown in college, was the face of the franchise of the New York Knicks for so very long. There are people walking the streets of New York City right now that have never seen the Knicks since Patrick Ewing played for them. Because really, that was the last time they were good. That just shows you how dominant he was in their uniform.
You want to talk about dominance? That's it, right there.
Edwards rechecked it. That's 6 blocks for Ewing. Jackson for the trailing Ewing.
The guy was so good, his era still echoes through a fan base starving for that kind of greatness again. But it wasn't just his teammates or young stars who saw it. Even his rivals were singing his praises.
Easy first ballot Hall of Famers. I mean, I tell people, man, you guys sleep on Patrick. You know, he just, none of us could get past Michael, but that man was great going back to college. Patrick Ewing is the nicest guy you ever gonna meet. And man, we were all terrified the first time you got a chance to meet Patrick because you were going on that Hoya paranoia stuff. And we're like, yo, man, should we go say hello to this dude? And man, you talk about one of the great people I've ever been around.
Chuck didn't stop there either. He put it plain and simple.
First of all, I think Patrick Ewing is probably the most underrated of all the great centers because he didn't win the championship. But I will say this about him. That guy, he's a man.
not one of the most underrated, the most. Shaq was loud, Hakeem danced, Robinson ran like a gazelle, but Ewing just showed up, clocked in, and wrecked your team. No drama, just buckets, blocks, and business.
Mason looking for help. Shot clock at 7. Ewing hits a three-pointer off glass.
Making it to the NBA is like winning the lottery. Staying there is even tougher, and becoming elite is a whole different tax bracket. Pat did all three, but somehow, people still act like he was just pretty good, which is wild, because even Shaquille O'Neal couldn't hold back the emotions when he saw Ewing.
You all right?
No.
Look like you're getting emotional.
Yeah,
Why you crying?
I just saw Patrick Ewing, man.
That's a real tear, too.
Yeah, that was Patrick Ewing.
Can we get a close-up on the tear? Yeah, can we zoom into that? That's real tears, ladies and gentlemen. That's not trickeration.
Are you saying not like the real
Get you
abs?
a tissue.
Like the real abs?
No, you know what? A lot of people when they talk about the greats, Patrick Ewing name never comes up, but I'm putting Patrick Ewing names in there as one of the greats. You know, he was a great competitor, even though he never won a championship.
Even at the time when you scream, "This is my house, get out."
Of course. Hey, listen. I watch a lot of karate movies, and in every karate movie, the student always had to kill the teacher to become the best. So, you know, even though Pat was better than me, I had to say that to psych myself out. But Pat was a great player, great competitor, did a lot, and, you know, I'm putting him as one of the top 5 centers.
If you're just joining
Man, that's crazy. The most dominant big man we've ever seen giving it up for Ewing. And then there's Mike Breen, the voice of the NBA, spitting out just facts.
Patrick Ewing played hard every night at both ends of the floor. And as much as every NBA player wants to say they do that, they don't.
You hear that? Pat didn't just play. He punched the clock on defense and offense every single night. He wasn't chasing highlights, he was chasing wins. That's the gap between good and great. And Ewing lived on the great side of that line.
It's full ball, and Ewing is outraged. Better get back, he's going to get a technical. Better get away.
Reggie had to pause and give Ewing his props. Yeah, he picked Hakeem in a Ewing-Hakeem matchup. No surprise there. But the guy that haunted his sleep, the one he had to deal with in conference year after year, was Patrick Ewing.
I agree with everyone here on the panel. I would go with Hakeem Olajuwon out of the two, but the guy that kept me up most nights because he was in our conference was Patrick Ewing. And not only because he was well coached under the Riley years, but you knew what you were getting defensively when the Knicks drafted Patrick. We knew he was going to protect the basket, but I think all of us would be a little bit shocked that he has over 25,000 points because he wasn't a scorer while he was at Georgetown. And the way he evolved offensively, yeah, he's not in the category of a Shaq or a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Hakeem Olajuwon, but you talk about one of the meanest guys to protect the paint. Patrick Ewing was that guy.
That's how much Ewing evolved. He came into the league as a shot-blocking machine, but left it with a resume most scorers dream of.
Threw it away. 1 second. Ewing hits the corner. And you got to know something when that happens. That's an omen.
And yet New Yorkers, somehow, still give him the cold shoulder.
I don't think a lot of New Yorkers give Patrick Ewing the credit that he deserves. A lot of times he was the scapegoat. And it's unfair to him because this was one guy that brought 110% each and every night he took the floor. And yeah, he didn't win a championship, but it wasn't because it was a lack of effort. And, you know, you hear New Yorkers talk about Patrick and sometimes the misfortune and not winning the championship, I scratch my head because there's a lot of us on this panel because of the great Michael Jordan didn't win a lot of championships.
Starks cuts to the corner. The inbounds to Ewing. Down to 3, down to 2. Ewing, not over the hit, and it's all over. The Indiana Pacers have defeated the New York Knicks 97-90.
And that's the part that stings, because we know what the other legends had. Jordan had Pippen, Bird had McHale and Parrish, Magic had Kareem and Worthy. Even Hakeem, who went on his solo run in '94, still had more help than Ewing ever got. Pat never had a true number 2. No all-star wingman, no elite floor general to set him up. Just grit, mid-range jumpers, and whatever cast the Knicks could patch together. But still, he battled.
Third quarter, nice look.
And just to really paint the picture here, you know who Pat's shooting guard was for most of those years? John Starks, an ex-CBA bucket getter who clawed his way into the league and earned every minute he got.
50 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Starks. Yes.
No disrespect, Starks was a gamer, but he was also calling Ewing Beast just to hype him up.
I just call him Beast, you know, Beast of the East. Like, whenever I call him Pat, he hated that. He was like, my name is Beast. So I think me calling him Beast all the time used to pump him up. And so that was his name on the court. He was Beast, Beast. Whenever you hear that, you know that's me calling him.
That's who Ewing rolled with, a backcourt built on heart, hustle, and maybe a little chaos. And at small forward, Anthony Mason, another CBA reclamation project turned gritty enforcer. These were not all-star co-pilots. They were New York tough, no doubt, but nobody was drawing double teams off Pat. Nobody was taking the pressure off the big fella. And then finally, a second scorer showed up in Allen Houston. But just when it looked like Ewing might get the help he deserved, his wrist gave out. A career-altering injury. Timing couldn't have been worse. It's wild that the man carried the Knicks for over a decade, and the moment the cavalry arrived, his body waved the white flag. So, next time someone brings up the greats, don't just rattle off rings and headlines. Remember the guy who carried New York on his back, night after night, without a star-studded roster or a parade in sight. Because ask the legends. Ask the players who had to face him.
I always will be a Knick, always will be a New Yorker. Thank you very much.
Patrick Ewing was special. And if you still don't see it, maybe you weren't paying attention.